fresh meat.
Mike Flanagan's name is known far and wide in the horror world. From his television shows to his movies, there is no one more at the top of their game than Flanagan. So it's interesting to know that he and his writing partner were approached about remaking a certain post-Scream slasher film. But what they did was completely unexpected. Join us today for what the f*** happened to this unmade horror movie, as we cover Mike Flanagan's I Know What You Did Last Summer.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Scream completely changed the slasher game when it released in 1996. Its writer, Kevin Williamson, was seen as the It Kid, and some of his past projects were rushed into production, including his adaptation of Lois Duncan's 1973 novel. Well, I mean, kinda. Adaptation is a loose word. He took the basic concept from her book of a tragedy haunting someone 1 year later and turned it into a full-blown slasher movie. What was to follow was considerably less impactful than its counterpart Scream, but it was successful enough to warrant a very rushed sequel just 1 year later. Jesus, 1 year? And while there are certainly fans of both of these movies, they weren't exactly anything special. The series dropped off, eventually releasing a straight-to-DVD sequel titled I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer in 2006. It featured no characters from the first two films, outside of the killer, and the production was considerably schlocky. Because of this, the series sat and languished for many years. There had been rumors of different sequels and even a remake or two. As is often the case in the horror world, wherever success was had, producers circled like vultures, trying to revive what was once dead. Mike Flanagan and his writing partner, Jeffrey Howard, were fresh off the success of their film Oculus, starring Karen Gillan. This was right in the midst of the reboot era. Wait, are we still in that era? Either way, reboots were hot in Hollywood. Flanagan and Howard were approached about remaking the 1997 Whodunit from Kevin Williamson, and they almost immediately, enthusiastically even, turned it down. Huh? What? I want to thank you guys for watching What the F Happened to This Unmade Horror Movie, and ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now, like this video, and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. And now, back to the show.
What are you waiting for, huh?
But the duo just wasn't interested in telling a story that everyone already knew the ending to. The hook-handed fisherman was a cool enough character, but his identity was already known and the twist well established. It had been parodied time and time again over the years, so no matter how many times they were asked, they just kept refusing. Until they met with Neil Moritz's production company, who held the rights to the film, and they were told they could do whatever they wanted, so long as they kept the whodunit nature. And just like that, the duo were intrigued enough to come up with a pitch. Howard has said he had no idea that the Lois Duncan novel even existed before they started outlining their project. However, he did read it in order to see if there was anything worth using or paying homage to. And while Duncan was very, very excited when it was announced that Flanagan was working on a reboot, she probably would have been very disappointed to see the slasher route they decided to take it. Because while Flanagan and Howard's version certainly feels unique, it definitely pays more homage to the 97 film than the 73 novel. The duo are horror fans after all. The hook-handed fisherman's jacket wearing killer is still included here, though their identity isn't the same. And it does still follow the Agatha Christie style dwindling of characters. The story centers around a group of friends on vacation right before they all go their separate ways at university. So, just like the original movie, they're partying it up and eventually someone gets murdered, but there's no hiding of any dead body going on here. Instead, the missing person is never actually found and just presumed dead. But our lead, Matt, is blamed for the disappearance. Matt is blamed for this girl's death and even goes on trial for it, but is thankfully acquitted. Unfortunately, that only really works in the eyes of the court, not the public, who still hound him like he's an actual murderer. There's even a podcast about the criminal case called I Know What You Did Last Summer. So, I mean, clearly Flanagan and Howard are having fun with the screenplay. One of the more interesting concepts at play here would have been the narrator. With the whodunit nature of the story, they were wanting to focus on shifting narratives, and a narrator who didn't know what was actually happening. While often narrators in these stories can be quite ominous and foretelling, the script had this narrator much more unsure of events, which added more to the mystery. You never quite know if what the narrator is telling you is actually the truth or not, or just what they think is the truth. Another huge standout is one of the fisherman's kills, which would have involved him pinning someone to the ground with solar lights. He'd stake them down one by one before finally going in for the final strike. Through the different iterations of the script, this sequence remained, and it would have definitely been a standout. There are admittedly some things that I'm not sure would work. It's been pretty well established that you need a female at the lead of your slasher movie. Otherwise, the story can come across as kind of, well, gay. And I'm not just saying that. There have literally been documentaries about this. Go check out Scream Queen, by the way. So the male lead definitely has an upward hill to climb, but it already does establish it as a little different from the other films. And long before the Halloween 2018 trend of bringing back legacy characters for a requel became so much of the norm, there were intentions to bring back Jennifer Love Hewitt's Julie for a brief role. See, you know that podcast that I mentioned earlier that follows the crime intently? Well, that's Julie. And she becomes even more involved once the fisherman starts attacking people. She would even have this extended run-in with the slicker-wearing psychopath. Another standout sequence. As much as I wish I could go over the twist, that just isn't my place here. There were many different versions of the ending, some darker than others, but ultimately neither of the writers has really let slip what their desired intentions ended up being for the third act. Unfortunately, for those interested in seeing this film come to fruition, Flanagan and Howard just stopped hearing from the production company. Anytime they were asked about it in interviews, they seemed just as interested in the news of its development. Given the success they'd had at the time, it's very strange that the production company wasn't gung-ho about moving this along. Howard had this to say about the scrapped project. It's hard to understand why some things get made and some things don't sometimes. This thing was kind of easy to understand. Nobody was wrong in this situation in my mind. Once it became clear that the ending was going to have to be softened, I think the interest in making the movie softened in tandem. So the project just went away. There was recently a TV show on Amazon Prime that tried to claim it'd be more like Duncan's novel, but it was still pretty slashery. They played very loose with the original concept and proved that it just isn't what audiences were after, getting canceled after only one season. I would say that they deserved more of a chance, but any show that randomly adds a cult element gets docked for lazy writing. And its cancellation likely means a lack of interest in the property anytime in the foreseeable future. Which is unfortunate, because the concept has always been a fun one that really lent itself to the horror. Flanagan and Howard have remained very busy in recent years, releasing The Haunting of Hill House and Midnight Mass for Netflix. And it seems like everything Flanagan touches turns to gold. Even the Shining sequel movie, Dr. Sleep, both creates its own identity while still paying tribute to what Kubrick and King did before it. His command over the genre has been one of the most impressive things to watch over the last decade. Needless to say, I'm a big Flanagan fan. With this continued dominance, I can't see Mike Flanagan returning to an I Know What You Did Last Summer remake. From a guy that seems so passionate about so many different things, it seems so clear that this one just isn't his priority. What does seem possible is that this script gets reworked into an original piece. Given how little connection there is to the original film or novel, This would probably be the easiest way to breathe new life into the story. Whether that ever happens remains to be seen. But whatever Flanagan's next move is, I'm sure you'll hear it from Joe Blow first. Are there any unmade horror movies that you want us to talk about? Comment on them below and we'll see you in the next episode.